This may sound like an odd passage of Scripture to turn to, but I just felt led to go back here again this morning to lay a foundation. Used these scriptures a couple weeks ago when we talked about the star. But I felt led to come back here again today. Matthew, the 2nd chapter, we're going to start at the first verse. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah. For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Yes, I do realize that Christmas is over. But I also realize that today is New Year's Eve, and we are facing the turn of another year. We're looking forward, looking to another year ending and another year beginning. And as I thought about that, I found myself coming back to these scriptures over and over again, thinking about them, reading them over again, and felt like this is where the Lord was leading me here this morning. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the star in relation to these scriptures, but this morning I want to talk about the actions of the wise men. We know the account. We know that while we think about this in terms of the Christmas story many times, and we think about this in terms of the wise men went unto Herod when they saw the star, we think about Jesus being a baby. But the reality of it is, Jesus was no longer a baby in this time, but he was a young child, as the Bible would call it. Biblical scholars believe that by the time the wise men made it unto Jesus, he was somewhere around 2, possibly 3 years old. So he was no longer an infant, he was no longer a baby, but he was a young child. Now, why is this important to us today? What point am I trying to get at? And I'm trying to make this as short as possible today. When the wise men came unto Herod, the wise men did not say, Where is the child? What the wise men said is, Where is the King of the Jews? They were looking for the Messiah. They knew that a Messiah had been prophesied. They saw the signs and the stars, and they knew that the Messiah had come. Now, just to bring everybody up to speed, make sure we're all on the same page here this morning. The Messiah was not merely just another prophet to come along. The Messiah was the person, the being that was coming to rescue all of Israel, to right everything wrong that had ever been done to overthrow the Roman government, the siege that had come over Israel. The Messiah was coming to set up the kingdom of Israel. That was what the Jewish culture thought of that time. So they were looking for someone who had come to save their culture. Now, what we do know is that the wise men, when they came to Herod, were smart enough to realize and even say, he has been born. So there was a realization there that they were looking for a baby. Now, why is this important yet again? Because what the wise men found when they made it was not a baby. It was a child. They were looking for the Messiah, the rescuer. And they did not find a palace. You know, it's kind of comical to me, the more you think about it, that they would go to Herod looking for the one that was going to overthrow all of Roman government. But they did not find him in a palace. At that point, they would have, it says they found him in the house. It didn't say the stable, because by this point we can assume 2 years is a long time to stay in a stable, guys. We can assume that Mary and Joseph found home somewhere. So all of these things line up to say that what the wise men found was not at all the picture that they were looking for. It wasn't at all the things that they would have expected to find when they were looking for the Savior of their people. Now, why is all of that important? Because of the next verse. Matthew 2:11 says, "And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh." Now, have I said anything this morning that anybody here didn't already know? There's no new information given. I'm simply stating facts of what we have studied for years and years and years, what we all know. Well, I'm glad I can give you something new. But what we can see, and what has stuck out to me, and what I'm trying to get across to you this morning, is the fact that nothing lined up the way it was supposed to in the wise men's eye, their mind's eye. What they thought they would have found, they didn't find, but it didn't hinder them at all. When they saw the child, they fell down and they worshiped him and they presented their gifts. It didn't matter that he wasn't in a palace. It didn't matter that he wasn't the King of Kings that they thought he would be. They still, when they found him, when they saw him, they fell down and they worshiped him and they presented their gifts. Why is that important to us? Because it's important for us to get the same determination in our minds that no matter what comes against us, what may change in our plans, because let me just go ahead and tell you, as we enter a new year, whatever plans you have for this year, the one thing I can guarantee you is they're all not going to go as smoothly as you have them planned out right this moment. If there's anything I have learned in 30 years of life, it never goes as smoothly as I planned out at the beginning of the year. Something comes along that changes things. Something comes along that throws that wrench or that curveball that you just weren't expecting. But church, even though the wise men had a curveball thrown that they weren't expecting, it did not change the fact that when they saw the child, they fell down and they worshiped Him. And they brought their gifts unto Him. Church, what I want to get across to you today is as we're entering this new year, as things come against us and change our plans, they change what we've thought of and what we've realized, what we've got to set in our mind. Let me just go ahead and tell you, my mind's eye has this church full. My mind's eye has us growing, has souls coming in and being saved. But you know what? If that doesn't happen next Sunday, it cannot deter me from coming to church and falling down and worshiping Him and presenting my gifts unto Him. There's got to be a determination that no matter what may change along the way, I'm still going to come and worship God. Now, Brother Christopher, are you talking just about faithfulness? I'm not talking about church attendance this morning. I'll just go ahead and tell you. That's not the topic of this message. The topic of this message is worshiping God. And it doesn't just matter that you come to church every time the church is open. I appreciate you being here. I've told you before this would be a very lonely place if I was the only one that showed up. But in the day-to-day life that we go through, when we're facing a trial that comes our way, and when we think everything was planned out before and we had it all laid out the way that we knew it should go, but nothing is the same anymore. Everything fell apart. It's still time to worship God. It's still time to fall down before Him and present our gifts to Him, that we can be faithful stewards back to Him. How many of us are ready to put 2023 behind us? I don't know about you, but I'm ready for that calendar to roll over and 2024 to start. It's a new year. It's a new start. It's fresh. I preached last week about new life. Well, a new year brings about that same excitement of new life. That hope that things are going to be better than they were before. That we can shut the page on one thing and open it on a new, and it's going to be better than what the old was. I'm looking forward for the new year. But as I stated last week, I know this year has brought about loss for some of us. I know some have faced trials greater than what they have ever seemed to face before. And some have looked around and said, I just don't know how much more of this I can take. 2023, while I can look back and you see, I could stand up here this morning and I could point your attention back to different things along the way that have been great. Don't believe me? If you remember, we had a singing back in the spring. We started the year off with a revival with Brother Josh. That was a good revival. I felt good about it. Felt the Lord move in it. We came back in the spring. We had a singing with Jacob and Danielle, and One Step Closer from North Carolina had a fantastic service that Sunday morning here. The Lord moved mightily in it. We got Sister Shanna back. We can look at different things after different thing after different thing, and I can tell you all the good things that have happened this year, and we can look at those and remember those, and it's going to put a smile on our face. But the reality of it is, in between every one of those good things were probably 10 or 15 trials that came along the way as well that were hard to get through. You know, Brother Nick's faced some trials this year with all the the dental work that he's had to have done, the fevers that he's ran, the sickness that he's had because of that dental work that he's had to have done. There have been trials interlaced between every good thing that we have had. Is that to bring us down? No, that's to paint a picture of reality. Life is not all good and it's not all bad. It's a mixture of great things and it's a mixture of horrible things that levels out in the middle and is life. And let me just go ahead and tell you, if you're happy to be shutting the door on 2023 and looking forward to 2024, try as you may. They've got that old superstition, wives' tale, whatever you want to call it. If you open up all the doors and all the windows, at midnight tonight, the old year can go out and the new year can come in. If you feel inspired to do that, be my guest. Have your way. But whether you do it or whether you don't, at 12:01, your life isn't instantly going to be different than it was at 11:59. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. 2024 can be the greatest year we have ever had. But it's not going to be because everything's just wonderful. I didn't do anything different. It's just a fantastic year this year. That's not going to happen. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. It's not going to happen. The same trials that you have gone through this past year are going to be there when we start 2024. The difficulties that you faced last year, there's going to be new ones that you're going to face in 2024. But what the difference is are we going to have the determination that every time we face one of those difficulties, we're going to bring it back and say, Jesus, the battle is yours, and I will not allow the enemy to steal my joy through this. I will not allow the enemy to overcome because you have already paid the price for my victory. Church, the wise men were determined. It didn't matter what they found when they got there. Whoever they found, whatever the Messiah was, it could have been a little baby. It could have been a big guy for all they knew. But whatever it was, there was a determination within them that they were going to worship the Messiah. Church, we've got to have that determination as we go into 2024 that no matter what may come against us, what the enemy may present against us, what situations we're still dealing with or what new ones come along, we will still worship the Messiah and come back to Him again and again and again and give of our gifts. You see, it's not merely enough just to come to church. Brother Christopher, what are you saying? What I'm saying is the wise men didn't just come and worship. The wise men came and they gave their gifts. I've never really looked into that aspect of it so much until this year. And I still don't really feel like I have the fullness of what it is. But let me tell you something, church. Each one of you, every single one, not just collectively, but every individual in this congregation has a gift that God has given to only you. And the reality of it is you have multiple gifts that God has given to you that I can't offer those gifts back to God. You have to offer those gifts back to God. It's not enough simply just to come and be in services. We've got to give of our gifts back to God this year. If we're going to see a great year, it's going to be because we gave ourselves back and said, God, use me. Do what you want with me. Whatever it is, I'm giving my gifts back to you. In years past, I can always remember taking a moment to reflect on the year as it had gone by. And most years, by December 31st, I'm ready for a new year to come. But especially since 2020 and the pandemic, it seems like every year has been a relief that it is ending and a hope that the next year will be a little better than the one before. The thing about it is, when we entered 2021, if you remember that year very much at all, it was a whirlwind. We had seen coronavirus come to the United States. The pandemic started, shutdowns happened, George Floyd happened. I was working in the sheriff's office at that time. I remember very well all the different chaotic mess that was going on through all of the things involved with the George Floyd's death and everything surrounding that, all of the different pandemic policies that were put in place by different state and national levels of government. And just to top it all off, you guys thought you had it bad. I got a brother-in-law in 2020. But I remember thinking, as New Year's came along, we hadn't been able to travel to see any of Sarah's family that year for Christmas because we were concerned about taking the virus to them. We didn't want to get her grandparents sick. We had made plans that we were going to go and spend New Year's with her mom and dad and siblings. And the 28th, we had a coronavirus outbreak in the jail that I was having to deal with 10 and 15 different inmates at any given time that were sick, that were developing the symptoms and testing positive for the virus. And I called Sarah at work that day and I said, Sarah, you need to pack up all your stuff and you need to head on to your mom and dad's house. I don't want to be around you and Sam right now and at risk getting you guys sick. I don't want to take it to them. Y'all go on, I'm staying home. And I remember as New Year's came around that year, it was just a low down time for me. I was home alone, didn't have my family with me, didn't have anybody around. It was just me. And I remember vividly thinking, thank God 2020 is over. How much worse could it get? It could not get any worse than this year has been. And 2021 happened. And guess what? As soon as we entered into 2021, there was the riot that broke out in Washington, D.C., where people were losing their lives, where this chaos broke out. There was division that came in our country like we had never seen before. There was finally a vaccination for the virus, but then it was forced so much by the government that it just became a dividing point. And if you didn't get it, then you were a bad person. And if you did get it, then you were a good person, but you might have taken the mark of the beast. And all of these horrible things that were going around were happening all over again. Guess what? The year didn't get any better. We quickly found out it could keep getting worse. And here we are at the end of 2023. The things that you faced, the things that you've gone through, you may be saying as well, it can't get any worse. Bring on 2024. Can't get any worse than what this year's been. Let me tell you, if you simply go into it with the hope or with the thought, it can't get any worse, you'll find out it will. It can and it will. But if you will go into 2024 with a determination like never before, that I'm going to worship God this year. I'm going to bring my gifts back to Him over and over and over again. And if I get done wrong along the way, I'm still coming back and I'm worshiping God. And if someone takes advantage of me along the way, I'm still going to come back and I'm going to keep offering the gifts back to God over and over and over again. Does it mean that we won't face any heartache in 2024? Absolutely not. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, we're going to face heartache in 2024, but we can come out on the other side of 2024 saying, man, God has been so good to us this year because we saw this happen and we saw this happen and we felt His presence come down amongst us and it swept through us and it changed us because we continually came back and we worshiped Him. Even though the devil tried to get in our way and stop us, we came back and we worshiped God over and over and over again. Jesus said in John the 16th chapter, the 33rd verse, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Church, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, we're going to face tribulation. We're going to face trials. We're going to face hard times. But be of good cheer. He has overcome the world. And if we will worship Him, we can get through it as well. David wrote, or the psalmist wrote in Psalms 30 and 5, "For His anger endureth but a moment. In His favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." Church, we may go through a period of weeping. We may go through those trials. And it may seem like they'll never end. Guess what? Sometimes we go through things. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. Sometimes you go through things and sometimes I go through things that a year ain't long enough to contain that trial that we're facing. Sometimes we go through things and it's been going on for 5 years, for 10 years, for however long we've had to deal with it. But guess what? If we'll keep on coming back and saying, God, I'm going to still worship You through it. I'm still going to be faithful to give of my gifts. He will get us through and we can come out victorious on the other side of it, whenever the other side may be. But we've got to continue holding on until we get to the other side. I don't know what 2024 is going to hold for us. There's a song that says, I don't know about tomorrow. I just live from day to day. I don't borrow from the sunshine, for its skies may turn to gray. I don't worry o'er the future, for I know what Jesus said. And today I walk beside Him, for He knows what lies ahead. The course says many things about tomorrow I don't seem to understand. But I know who holds tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand. Some of you probably remember far better than me. But in 1999, it was believed that at the stroke of midnight, everything that we knew was going to suddenly cease to exist. The computer systems couldn't roll back or roll over to double zeros because it was going to crash it. It was believed that if you went to bed on New Year's Eve of 1999, the world was going to be completely different when you woke up January 1st. Church, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I don't know what you're going to wake up to tomorrow. Do I expect the world to be completely different in the morning? Not really. But the reality of it is, I don't know what's going to happen tonight. Brother Rick said, if you've paid attention to the news, there's a heightened terrorist threat tonight. There could be a giant terrorist attack to take place tonight that changes the world as we know it. It could very possibly happen. And if your hope is in 2024 and in tomorrow, everything's going to be better. First off, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I'm sorry, you're sorely mistaken. But it could even be detrimental if you woke up and everything had changed, and that was your hope. But if your hope is in the one who holds tomorrow, it doesn't matter what may happen tonight. It doesn't matter what we may have to face tomorrow. It doesn't matter what we may have to go through in 2024. We know God will not fail if we'll just keep holding on to Him. So I want you to stand with me, if you will. I want to ask you the question this morning. The wise men did not change the response based on their situation. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. As times get tough this year, as trials come, what is your response going to be? Are you going to say, woe is me, God has forsaken us? What's the old saying? May as well go eat worms. Or is your response going to be, even though the devil is trying to attack me, I'm going to continue to worship God. I'm going to continue to give my gifts unto the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And if I get abused and beat down along the way, I'm going to keep on worshiping God and giving my gifts to the King of Kings. Brother Christopher, that sounds like a mighty long year. It might be. But you know what? Paul said, I count it but dung. Everything that he had achieved, everything that he had done, it couldn't compare to what God was doing. Church, as we close out this year, I want to ask that we all come and gather around the altar here this morning. And I want us to ask God to help us. I'll be the first one to admit There were things that were thrown at me in 2023 and every year prior that I wasn't expecting. And I'm just going to go ahead and admit to you, there were times when those things came up that my response became, God, what are you doing? God, why? These people are just horrible. These things going on around me are just... I live in a world of idiots. Why, God? Why? When my response should have been, God, I'm still going to worship you. God, I may not understand, but you're still the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, and I'm still going to be faithful and give of my gifts. Church, I've not done it right. Everything along the way hasn't been just the right way. I'm not going to pretend that I have. But that's why I feel like this morning is so important. That we can come together as a church family and collectively ask the Lord to help us. That as we enter 2024, there can be something different about us, that no matter what may come against us, we can have a determination and a resolve to say, I'm going to come back and worship God first and foremost. I'm not going to get stuck in the whys of it all. I'm not going to get stuck in the Lord, you have given up on us. You have the despair and the despondency of the situations that I may face. I'm going to come back and I'm going to worship God. And I'm going to give of my gifts back to God. And what happens